All right, you are now tuned in to the Rotated Views podcast. I am your host, Jimmy Lee Velez. I'm here with Goose.
What's up?
Heck.
Future.
Manny and Gabe. That's right, folks. We are stacked the future. In this episode, the crew talks about their thoughts on what the future holds in their lives and the world at large. We cover topics that range from sports, health, cures, technology, education, and much more. We wrap the episode up with quotes from Jim Rohn and Eleanor Roosevelt. If you're new, thank you for listening. Don't forget to download and subscribe. We drop a new episode every Tuesday morning for your listening pleasure. Kicking things off with a definition from dictionary.com. Future. Time that is to be or come hereafter. Something that will exist or happen in time to come. All right, pretty straightforward stuff. So I wanted to go over a quick article from inventorstrategies.com, and they just simply titled it Future Inventions. So I'm just going to kind of go over a few, and then we can talk about it, right? All right, so let's read the inventions that they talk about. So the first one is a cyborg beetle. So advances in microelectronics is making yesterday's science fiction into tomorrow's future inventions. Scientists at the University of California have implanted beetles with miniaturized electronics that allows the insects to be controlled. Research presented at a conference in Italy demonstrated a new technology for creating cyborg insects. The flying beetles receive wireless signals from a mobile transmitter that controls the insect. Varying impulses trigger the appropriate response from the beetle so that it flies according to its handler.
That's weird.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's odd. It's good for defense. Like you could plant that bug in somebody's conversation.
Wasn't that like in Richie Rich? The movie Richie Rich?
Yeah,
wasn't it like a bunch of bugs?
It was a bee. It was a wasp.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was
I
a
just
wasp.
watched it the other day.
All right, the next one, an undersea resort. L. Bruce Jones is a submarine inventor who designs and sells private luxury submarines. Following in the footsteps of his rocket scientist father and his grandfather, who invented self-elevating jack-up rigs and created the world's first containerized shipping company, Bruce has invented the world's first undersea resort. Accessible by 2 elevators from the surface, the resort is being built on the seabed surrounding a private Fiji island in the South Pacific.
That's
Wow.
interesting.
So the underwater facilities will include 24 luxury staterooms, a restaurant, a bar, library, conference room, wedding chapel, undersea spa, and the ultra-luxury Nautilus suite with stunning undersea views. Very
That's
cool.
creepy. You know how dark that's going to
It's
be
weird.
at night?
They have this picture here.
That's why you turn on the
Right,
lights,
one of
man.
those, one of the aquariums has something like where you have like the shark swimming above you. What
Yeah.
aquarium is it?
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
The Baltimore does.
All right, so the next one is electrical clothing. Do you guys remember Steve Urkel had like the electrical, like the heater pants? And they like started smoking.
Yeah. Showing off in front of Laura.
One of the future inventions that could greatly impact our lives are nanoribbons. Rubber films developed by engineers at Princeton University could power mobile devices and other electronic devices. The silicone sheets are embedded with ceramic nanoribbons that generate electricity when flexed, converting mechanical energy to electrical energy. Materials made of this material... I'm sorry, that I read that right. Materials made of this material, such as shoes, would harvest electrical energy created from walking and power everything from an iPod to a pacemaker. Wow.
Nice.
The nanoribbon strips are so narrow that 100 strips fit side by side in a space of a millimeter.
Wow.
Wow.
Jeez.
The strips are then embedded into clear sheets of silicone rubber to create a chip. These sheets could be woven into fabric and placed against any moving area on the body to create electricity. For example, a vest made from this material could take advantage of breathing motions to generate energy. Wow. Nanoribbons are highly efficient in converting about 80% of mechanical power into electricity.
How much is that button down, huh?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Needleless injection. The future invention which is great because I got jacked up by both a PPD test and a my flu shot, man. It hurt. Anyway, this future invention is a device for delivering medication and vaccinations through the skin. As an alternative to injecting a needle, microporation is a painless method of transferring medication intraepidermal into the body using laser technology. A handheld laser creates micropores in the epidermis of the skin for transfer of molecules. It has a familiar comparison to the needleless device used by Dr. Bones McCoy on Star Trek. The popular sci-fi series has inspired more than a few new inventions, including the laser and the cell phone. This microporation technology is painless to use and requires no supervision to the administrator. The interface controls regulate the dosage. Well, that should be interesting.
That's interesting.
T-shirt gadgets. Scientists at Stanford University are developing future inventions using e-textiles. The new class of flexible, stretchable, and lightweight clothing would function as rechargeable batteries. Cotton and polyester fabrics are dyed with an ink made from carbon nanotubes. I feel like this was just like this
That's
other
about
thing.
That's the same.
Similar to
clothing,
nanofibers.
The nano clothing.
Similar, the electronic properties of the fabric are maintained even when the clothing is washed. Research believe that e-textiles will eventually allow us to use our clothing as gadgets. Oh, okay, so this is different. Talking to a friend through your shirt sleeve.
They don't do that
or
now.
just
CIA.
simply cheating on a test. Serving the web. All right, tissue regeneration. One of the future inventions in healthcare may be the development of a spray gun for regenerating skin tissue. The Armed Forces Institute of Regenerative Medicine, AFIRM, recently established by the U.S. Department of Defense, is funding research into the regrowth of bones, muscles, tendons, nerves, and blood vessels. University of Pittsburgh's McGowan Institute for Regenerative Medicine will join a consortium of 30 minutes in regenerative research. And the last one, e-paper. Among the future inventions in e-readers is the paper-thin, flexible film that reads like a magazine or newspaper. LG Display, a manufacturer of thin film transistor liquid crystal display panels, has developed an 11.5-inch flexible e-paper display. The 0.3 millimeter thick metal foil substrate resembles a traditional newspaper but operates as an e-reader. The GIP, Gate-In Panel, technology promises to be the next generation in digital display technology competing in the e-book market. E-paper's ultra-thin, flexible, and lightweight form reduces maintenance and power consumption cost, but its scalable size encourages additional applications such as mounting to flat and curved surfaces like walls and pillars. All right, so anyway, we get the point,
That's
right?
the future.
All right, so speaking of future, so we just, read through a couple future technology. We get the point that there's, technologies out there and inventions to be, invented, and the future will definitely look much more different than it currently does. Although I did hear something crazy. I did hear it was like, I think I might be combining two different things, but one of them was from Mark Cuban, from owner of the Dallas Mavericks. Dude has a background in IS, sold a bunch of companies, bought a bunch of companies, featured in the Shark Tank, billionaire. Anyway, so this guy's saying he's advising, like if you have nowhere to go career wise, to get into philosophy and psychology, I guess, because he's saying, at one point we can't compete with the machine. And at what point could you ever compete against a machine? And he says, yes, it will be based off, obviously, emotion and philosophy.
Sure.
Where they won't be able to compete with us in that sense. However, because we're the one that's giving them
Sure.
the actions to take, but we're making them, they're machines because they do certain things. But they don't have emotion,
Sure.
and they can't think philosophically. They can't think on their own.
Sure.
They're thinking based off what we gave them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Artificial intelligence or programmed intelligence is based off of logical statements.
Yes.
Right.
So they won't ever think illogically. It's almost like they keep running into the same thing. Whereas we dream, we have goals and stuff like that. They can't set goals. They can't. So I am really combining a bunch of stuff that I heard. Because actually right now I'm reading Psycho-Cybernetics. But Mark Cuban had said that, and it was like something like this little snippet that I saw of him. And the other thing was, it said the future will look like everything mechanical around us, and the cool thing will be learning how to write with a pencil.
Yeah.
Literally. Like, we're literally reversing everything because
crazy.
technology is going to be so far out that, actually writing with a pencil is going to be an actual...
It's like a novelty.
Yeah, it's like a
Absolutely.
technique
Wow.
or like something to like, whoa, like you
pretty
know how
wild.
to do that.
Well, I'm interested that my kids, because not every kid learns cursive or handwriting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, I mean, we had to learn it, and it was kind of
Yeah.
ingrained in us. But they're learning it, and they think it's the coolest thing ever. It's like, what? What's this? We're gonna type
Why is it curvy?
I was like, oh my god, I'm
We
getting
don't
old.
type it. So, based off what you're saying, artificial intelligence, Gabe, I don't know if you've seen the show Westworld
Well,
on
I haven't seen it,
HBO,
but I
like,
saw it,
or
yeah.
heard of it.
Yeah.
So basically, it's this guy that he creates another dimension, I would say.
It's like I guess, in the basic sense, like a theme park, sort of like, but for adults, where it was like you can go in there and live in a different type of world, like Westworld, where you can live in the old West, and there's
And
robots.
everyone
and-
there is mechanical except for a specific person that's not. But they can do, these people do everything and anything that you want them to do. Like, they'll go to
Gotcha.
the bar, go hang out with you. They'll shoot with you. They'll go play, like, darts with you, or whatever the case you want it to do. Everything is mechanical. Yeah, I mean...
I could definitely see myself talking to a robot.
That's your pal.
I
That's
would,
weird.
I've actually, who am I
curse
kidding?
you
That's
out.
where we are now. I mean, think about it right now. We have Google Home, and I'm literally talking to this thing to
She
do
didn't answer
stuff.
me
I'm
today.
like, hey, I have ask specific. You can ask specific questions. Tell it to play music. Tell it to activate your alarm system. It's all this crazy stuff.
And I mean, that's definitely what we're going towards. Is at least in our near future is like the interconnectivity of like literally practically everything. Which
Yeah.
we're halfway into that point now, but it's. Just
I can't wait till
becoming-
they insert a cell phone into my body so it doesn't look like I'm
Well,
always
that
looking
goes
at my
to
cell
your.
phone.
Well, that goes to your electronic T-shirt. What you just
like
wearing
walking
your,
into things.
We just, it'll be a part of you. It'll be
Yo.
integrated into everything that's around you.
So we leave things that look like a monitor, right? Like watching TV, that you can do multiple things now. They have, quote, smart TVs, and we have a smart DVD player. We have smartphones. We have smart cameras,
Yeah.
right? And they're
Smart
calling them this
people.
thing. I think obviously that's like a marketing ploy, whatever. But what they do, it's almost like you have this, and then you get in get into your vehicle that has a monitor that's like touchscreen. It's like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Well, we think it's crazy now. I'm sure like in 10, 20 years, we're just like, oh yeah, that's
But
what.
all that
whatever,
was
but-
science fiction. What 20, 30
Right.
years ago.
Right.
Flat
And the
panel TVs.
Jetsons,
on,
even looking at the
screens and all.
Jetsons. Come on, look at the Jetsons. TVs hanging off the wall. There was all cartoons, and now you got TVs hanging off the wall here, wireless.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's where my mind state is at. Jetsons is futuristic.
Well, and what was the maid lady like that? They have things that
It's like a-
they got the
She was a
vacuum.
robot.
They got
She was a
vacuums that
robot.
go.
Oh
out,
yeah,
the iRobots that go out, or there's a little
Rosie.
Rosie, whatever. But those things, I mean, they exist.
Right.
So, all right. So, what do you expect the future world to look like and operate as?
Robots.
And so, the future, let's just say, just because that's a very broad question, but let's just say 50 years from now. So, think about 50 years ago and then compare it to 50. Because I feel like where we are now, technology now is taking off. I don't
Right.
think it took off yet. I
No,
think it's
it did-
taking off.
Yeah.
Because once you start seeing inventions that were created in your lifetime that are inside new inventions,
Sure.
you know what
Right.
I'm saying? You're like, okay, so this is about to like blow up because you went from, a typewriter and then you had to go whatever it was 30 years before an actual computer came out to type on, right?
Yeah.
The timeline's obviously that I'm saying is all jacked up, but in essence, it's a long time where we went from a cell phone to the telephone, when the telephone was, Alexander Graham Bell created the telephone in the early 1900s or late 1800s, whatever. It literally took 100 years to then just get off that concept that you can do more than just phone calls. You can text somebody, right?
Yeah.
It took that long to the point where now it's like applications, and now you could do multiple things, and now you could do everything that I don't need to repeat myself, but everything that you can do with a cell phone at this point. It's just
you carry around a computer,
but it's way faster in time, right?
Yes.
Like Apple celebrating what 10 years? Last year they celebrate 10 years of the iPod, right?
Yeah.
The
Like
iPhone.
2000
iPhone, yeah.
or iPhone. Sorry.
Well, think how quickly that evolved from
Right.
music, right? You had music, and then the actual, it was a touch screen,
The iPod Touch.
the iPod Touch, and
Right.
that quickly turned into a phone, and that happened like bang, all within
it was
a couple
nuts.
of years,
Within
all
2
within
years of it, yeah.
our college years, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's walking around with, an iPod, and then it was a mini, and all of a sudden it was a touch, and then the touch turned into a phone, and the rest is history. I mean,
Yeah.
that snowballed into what we have now.
And that changed exactly what we thought it was a smartphone. Because it's funny, because if you saw the early prototypes of what Android looked like, it looked like a BlackBerry. It
Yeah.
had like a little screen and it had like a bunch of little numbers on the
Actual
bottom.
buttons.
Right.
Yep.
And as soon as Apple came out, it dramatically changed into a full screen
I,
item.
I had that phone. It was a Droid. It was a Droid one. I had that first phone. It was the screen up top, and then the actual button that looked like a BlackBerry, but it wasn't a BlackBerry.
Yeah.
I had the first one. They got rid of that phone like
Yeah,
that.
quick.
It was gone.
There was only like one or two
Super
models,
quick.
and that was it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So back in the day, the future was always showing flying cars, and people like
Because the first thing I thought of was, if you think of like what Back to the Future back in what was it,
86.
mid 80s, whatever it was. Oh no, yeah, 86. It was supposed to be 86. And
86.
what 2015 is what the year they went to. It was flying cars.
yeah,
and all
flying
that stuff.
cars and all types of craziness.
Self-tying shoes.
Self-tying shoes, and none of that it's all irrelevant. I mean, you see, like right now, I think the closest thing is like what the
There is a self-tying shoe though.
Yeah.
There's Nike has it, right?
yeah.
Because they do have hoverboards.
Well, yeah, the hoverboards were
Surfboard.
well, no, the hoverboard that they showed on Back to the Future, they made now, but now it's just wheels. So I mean, they're getting there, but they're not close to it.
I don't think we'll ever see it.
What,
No,
the
they
floating?
they have
They have a
stuff like
hoverboard.
that.
Yeah.
We don't have it. It's not accessible to us, but
It's not
I've seen
consumer-
it. Yeah, it's not consumer, but you could see his dude's literally on this little hover thing. He's like floating, and he's literally going around his house. It's not touching the floor or nothing.
Really?
Yeah, it's out. They can't. The problem with a lot of the stuff, it's like the computer when it first came out.
Can't
it
mass
took
produce
three. Yeah, it took 3 buildings for a computer.
Yeah.
Where then they have to keep making it so it's cheaper and smarter to make, and to the point where they can actually profit off it. You
Right.
can't no. Even with those hoverboards, it was so much money that they made a crazy killing, but that came and went already. Like who has one?
Right.
Now? You know what I'm saying? Like a little 14-year-old kid who his parents couldn't afford it 3 years ago. Seriously, that's the truth.
Yeah.
Because now they're $100. They
Right.
came out, they're like $1,000. Literally, I remember seeing like a thing on Instagram, it's like $9.99. Then they dropped drastically within like 6 months. You can get it for $500. Within 6 months of that, it was $250. To now,
Yeah.
literally, you can get one for $99.
No, it's almost like TVs. You get a TV, it's they're $4,000, and then a
Yeah.
year later, it's like, oh, you can get it for $1,500.
Well, that's like me. So when I bought my first flat screen TV was 2006. I paid $800 for it. It's a 32-inch TV, which I still have today. Flat screen, flat panel. We just bought a 32-inch flat panel screen for $150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's crazy.
It's funny. I saw someone on one of those like Facebook yard sale things selling like an old 32-inch. It was a flat screen, but it was like thick.
thicker back.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
a thicker back or whatever. Trying to sell it for like $250, and people were commenting on like her thing, like, you realize we can get almost 1.5 of what a brand new ones of what you're selling. You got to be selling this for like $50 or something,
Yeah.
to even have
Right.
to make money on it. It was definitely from like 2003.
Yeah, definitely original.
Yeah, but so think about 50 years ago and then compare, like, where could we be 50 years from now? You know what I mean? So 2068. That sounds crazy, actually. Doesn't it? 2068.
Mm.
That does sound crazy.
You know what? I'm not one. I can't see that stuff. Like to see that type of stuff. Like, oh, how much? I always think to myself, how much better could you be? Like I was a kid in N64 when it came out. I was like, how can you make video games any better? And you see them now, and they're so lifelike. So it's so difficult for me to say, man, what would TV look like? Like, what would video games look like? What would medicine look like? What would technology, cars, all the above? Like I can't
Yeah, but with all those things, I just don't. I think that elements of them will still be around. I don't think they themselves will be around.
Right.
Like I don't think there'll be TV. You know what I'm saying? Like there'll be like even right now, it's changing right before our eyes. Sure. I mean, you have all these different versions of actual entertainment that's protruding through your TV, or for lack of technical terms here, but it's not like cable or satellite or public television.
Yeah.
It's a movie or a series someone created, digitally recorded it, and put it in a format that we can now watch through this. When back in the day, the concept of television was you had to wait around till your stuff came out. Now we're so customized that we record stuff when we're not there. We can watch at at our leisure. So you think about 50 years from now, it's like I don't even know if there'd be anything on a wall, but just have like plain walls outside of like pictures. Maybe I don't even know if you have pictures. Who has a lot of pictures at this point, right?
Nobody.
Right? It's I mean, there's people there, but it's definitely when growing up, people had walls of pictures, family pictures and stuff, like going up the staircase and all that kind of stuff. Man. Like it's like to the point where we have a section in my house there's pictures and that's it.
Yeah.
And they're plotted here and there, but like growing up, we had pictures everywhere. I don't know.
School pictures. Oh, they were huge, right? You take your yearbook pictures, like, oh my God, look how it's changed. Well, now you go in there and you go back 2 years ago on that same day. It's like real quick, you can go back and say, oh my God, look how much they've grown on your Facebook flash, whatever it is, a flashback. Yeah. I just saw that the other day. 4 years ago, my parents turned 50. I was like, oh my God, my son was 5, my daughter was just born, and I'm like, damn. Would have never, if you had to go upstairs in your attic to get the pictures, pull them out, knowing they're not in order. But now you see pictures all the time. You see memories all the time. So pictures are kind of a thing of the past, which is bizarre.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Even the fact that you can save the pictures onto a thumb drive and you don't have to get them developed because you could see them on the computer. Like before, you took the pictures, you waited a week before you get the picture developed.
Had to go to Rite Aid.
Yeah. So funny. Or the photo mat. I don't know if anybody remembers the photo mat. You had to wait the following week to get them developed because that's what you had to wait for.
Or
now,
the other half of that is like if you want a picture frame, you can have one that cycles 20 pictures in it and have So you don't have to have
a rotating.
You don't need a whole wall, and you can have one that shows all the pictures you had in the same.
Okay, so we're here now. So what is the future? We talked about the past, right? We're here in the present. What do you think the future looks like? Because what else can you do other than digitally? Like,
there's a lot. I think it's countless. I think it's ridiculous how much more you can do. I can't say specifically what they would do, but you can somewhat see where they're going. All right, so one of the questions is even like education, where you go back 150 years, and to go to school in general was a privilege. Mm-hmm. You had to go to a schoolhouse, which is sometimes a church was one and the same. Where during the day the kids will go for a class in a classroom with a teacher. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Until we then graduated to, no pun intended, but moved on to different segments of what that actually looks like, what that actually means. There's actually grades. You know what I mean? It wasn't before. It was literally just learning the English language, learning how to read and write. That was it. You know what I mean? To the point then we got, higher learning. Then you got real specific with careers and so on and so forth, right? And to the point now where you can take out of the comfort of your home, you can get a college degree.
Sure. And
I know we would say at the comfort of your home, but it's not really comfortable, to be honest with you. Yeah. But you don't have to. There's nothing. Who's to say that a lot of things won't morph into something like that? You know what I mean?
I'll say on that level specifically, I was thinking, because it's already obviously in the process now, is kind of virtual but also augmented reality, where it's like you're not fully logging into something, but it's something that it projects on there, but you can still interact with it.
Right. Or you with what you're saying, you getting graded with your life is going to be the next school. Not necessarily like sitting in a classroom.
Yeah.
Like the way how you, it's like a point system or something, like how you help someone cross the street or take groceries out of an older person's, whatever. Even groceries now get delivered to your house. Like that was never a thing. Yeah. The closest thing we got to that in the 90s was I remember they had a spot over here in Levittown where it was like a drive-through where you can drive through, and that lasted not long at all. But anyway, so I mean, getting graded on life, that could be the new school. Like just how you operate in society.
Yeah, because
how much do you contribute?
To be honest with you, you can learn anything now. Like, you don't have to go to school to learn.
So then they're going to put it on you.
Right.
Everything's at your fingertips.
Yeah.
Learn it on your own time. We're grading you how you operate in society and what you do with that.
Could be.
That's how you get X, Y, and Z degrees. And it could be degrees, not even how we see them, just something else.
Well, not only that, and you can then find on the internet what you're really passionate about. You know what I mean? Like, back then, you could, if you were mechanical, like, I say back then, like, let's just say the 1700s, there was nothing to do, right? When we were first developing this country, a builder just kind of naturally happened. They were good at it, or whatever. Somebody who sewed
Trade.
You figured out your trade, and then you became a master at it. At this point, I mean, you have the whole world at your fingertips. You can go by yourself, and if you're that interested, just start perusing and stumbling upon what you're really passionate about. And it's limitless.
And then you get paid for your actual value.
Right.
And what you're bringing to the table.
Right.
Outside of, not it's because who you know, not it's because blah, blah, blah. It's like that grading system, like the real hustlers are going to make the money. You know what I'm saying? The real, when you're really getting graded on for what you're worth at that point, it's different, right? Then that also, they take into consideration. It's almost like a back of a football card or baseball card. Remember growing up, you saw the stats. Like you're going to be loaded with that. That's your resume. I did, and he's like, "Oh, rookie of the year! This dude did this, this, and this." We're rooting on these dudes for hitting 50-something plus home runs to 70-something plus home runs. Is the human going to get bigger? Possibly. We've gotten bigger over hundreds of years, so it's crazy to think that we could be 7 foot tall, 8 foot tall species and it be absolutely normal. Think about doorways from old 100-year-old buildings. They're tiny.
They're 6 foot.
Yeah.
Now everything's over.
And now you're like clonking your head. My buddy in Bristol used to have.
The doorways are small, but the ceilings are tall.
Right.
Well, anyway, things in the future is like I feel like it's being made to simplify your life. Like everything's so much easier.
Right. Well,
like right now, I just got a score and an update of the Phillies game without watching the game, and I know who's winning. So like that's like before you had to watch TV or read the newspaper or listen to the radio to listen to the sports.
Well, yeah, and we're also talking about that with investments. When you're like back in the day, you had to wait till unless you had a hookup, you had to wait till the newspaper came out the next day or the freaking Barron's report. Yeah. Oh, man. So you had to wait for all that stuff, then make phone calls to the floors to then put your investment in
when they opened up to make sure you got the first
right to now where we have cryptocurrencies and the forex and you could trade 24 hours a day.
Sure.
Yeah. You know what I mean? At on your cell phone.
Yeah.
But so even like things like that, it's like investing has changed from 30 years, 50 years ago to now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where you have 15-year-old millionaires off of crypto, just for example.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And it's just weird because how many 15-year-old millionaires were of the stock market 50 years ago?
Yeah.
You could probably find somebody, but I'm not sure.
There weren't many.
But you're not going to tell me there's a classroom full of kids now, literally they're kids, teaching at the age of 18, grown men how to invest in certain stocks.
That's
it's just crazy because they figured it out because in their mind they grew up with video games, so they're investing like it's a game. So when they see like the ups and downs and the
trends,
like the trends or whatever, but they have like even like in the strategies that they're going to use are based off of the patterns that they're seeing of what what a specific stock is doing or what a specific segment of the market is doing, and they're literally watching that and they see patterns. It's a very basic way of investing, but theoretically that's how it really is done by observing past trends, reading forecasting what it's going to be. But in their mind it's like a video game because it's fake. It's
but think about like the older guys who get upset with it. Don't get upset with it, like don't understand it. Those guys had to read trends. They had to go probably filter through papers, reports, years. We're looking at 5-year reports, 10-year reports, checking out the trends. Where now it's a snapshot in 0.1 seconds, and you can be like, oh, okay, well, look, it did that 10 years, 15 years, 20, whatever it is, and you can pick it up that much faster what guys had to go through, or people in general had to go through so much information to get to answers we can get to so quickly.
Yeah. But then the operating in this fast of a pace, they're not fit for that.
No.
Right.
Just the same way as like, it's easy for us to pick up on certain things. It's absolutely, it would demolish their brain. They would literally go insane picking up information as fast as I'm not even gonna say people younger than me can pick up and make split decisions, almost robotic like, and go based off that. The older people, you're not built like that.
Yeah.
Like, you can't operate in this world like that. You know what I'm saying?
was-
Just as much as we wouldn't be able to operate as efficient as they were back in their day. They can't operate. So yeah, some things here come easy, but what complicates that is the over amount of information that we do have, and you have to decipher through the crap. And how you do that is how fast can you realize what's junk and what's good.
Yeah.
Right.
So it is at our fingertips. Now the problem is, what we were talking about before, is customizing what we're getting.
Right.
We're talking about like stock markets, like if I just want to be in a particular segment of the market, for example, crypto or the Forex, if I just want to stay in that, or precious metals, then I can just get information fed to me literally just for precious metals and don't have to worry about the busyness. Whereas there were some newsletters that I didn't understand, like just starting out, it was just on the general market, which is great, but I quickly realized you only need one of those newsletters. I don't need 15 of them bad boys coming in, because now I'm inundated, right? And then whatever I'm focusing on, there's a newsletter titled like the Options Strategist, right? Where now it specifically telling me what's happening in this specific market. Where it goes to the customization really of life. And I don't think it's possible for the human to operate. I don't know. I don't think it's possible to operate outside of what nature provides. Because people always say like, oh, no one goes outside and play. No one does whatever examples that they give. And that might be for a specific period of time, I think. I think it's hard to operate outside of what's bigger than what we are. Or there's more land and water than there are, humans taking up this space. Does that make sense? Like, the world's 75% water, right? So we're not living on water. So if the world's 75% of this, then it's obviously more than what we are, because we're not populating the entire.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
We're not taking up 100% of the earth.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, at one point we have to encounter this.
Sure.
Is what I'm trying to say.
No, yeah, because there's no way to ever fully get away from just going outside your house. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. We could be living in big bubbles,
Well,
in this artificial world. It's possible.
Well, I was watching. I can't remember what I was watching. Was you could ride your bike without leaving the house, and you could feel like you're riding your bike down the street. Like, it has like this big screen in front of you, and you can pick any park you want to go to, and you ride your bike through this park without leaving your house. But you enjoyed your day because there's birds flying, you see people outside playing and stuff like that, and it's like you were outside. It's artificial. So you rode your bike, or trained for riding your bike outside and not being bored with looking at a wall.
That same device also has a cyclist coach on the other end, going through exercises and interval training and literally motivating on the other side.
Keep
that's what
moving,
I was talking about before. Was like the augmented or virtual reality. It was like you just log in something, because the ones now that currently exist that are consumer friendly are attached to, you have to have a super high powered computer that goes along with that. But the ones they're coming out with actually fairly soon are ones that are independent of all that. You can put it on. It'll be, you might have to attach it like via like internet or whatever to connect to all that stuff, but it will be detached from your high-end computer. You can just plug it in, whatever, it'll sense all that stuff around. So you can sit on your bike and think you're rolling down the street, whatever. But
in a nice fancy park.
So to kind of put a twist to that, we've moved on to specific like gladiator type events. However, it almost came full circle now with like having something like the UFC, where take a look at like the gladiator events, back in, the Roman Empire, right? And it's literally a bunch of people in an arena screaming. Of course, they put a twist to it by putting, lions
Animals
and stuff in
it.
there, but
sure,
barbarians.
They're fighting for their lives. I'm not saying people, were watching, but what do you think the future of sports will look like? being okay. So if everything can't, this is what I was trying to say. Everything can't be artificial, or
Right.
can it? I don't know, because it's like the physical aspect of it is like, are there still going to be baseball? Then that means you're going to take away everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then it really is a human versus the machine. Like we're literally going to be like opponents. Like right now, part of winning a championship as a human, I think, is actually getting through the season, being that good, right? Beating the best of the best, being the best in the world, but getting through it from game one to the championship game. If there's getting through it physically, right? Part of that is watching the stories and hearing the injuries. This dude blew out a knee. This guy, elbow popped out of place. And you're watching these people go through this, and by the end of the season or playoffs come, they recover and they're back. How fun is it watching a bunch of machines play each other?
Yeah, no,
This is what I'm
that's fair.
saying.
Yeah.
That we have the advantage point of being faulty. There's a perfection in that, which in a weird freaking way. But there's something awesome about being imperfect, if that makes sense. There's something exciting about the underdog story.
Sure.
Is there going to be an underdog machine? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's like
Oh, yeah.
there's nothing fun about that. It's like, all right, because you're built off logic, so basically some level of perfection is there because you're not worried about your girlfriend looking at you in the crowd, so you're trying to show off and then you mess up. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not going to operate that way. It's not even called thinking.
Nah.
It's just them
There's
operating.
not gonna be any imperfection. It's gonna be a perfect game, which kind of
Well, there could be malfunctions, but
Sure.
there's no real storyline.
There's no
Right.
spirit. It doesn't
Right.
evoke anything from the human. Like a machine doesn't do anything.
There's
So
no real
no
fight.
excitement.
No
There's
fight.
no real fight.
There's no.
Because
no.
well, I mean, it's kind of going somewhat on that level. I mean, because I mean, I was jokingly going to say Rock and Talking Robots, but there was a movie that came out like a few years back, which was
Pacific Rim.
Airbud.
No.
well, no,
Hugh
it-
Jackman.
Yes, but it was kind of in that vein where it was essentially Rock and Talking Robots, but it was like the futuristic of where, yeah, they had mechanical boxers essentially, but they were human controlled. So you had the inputs, you had the computers, and all the advanced things.
So Hugh Jackman was literally fighting, right? So he was the fighter, but they were never getting hit.
Oh, okay.
So the machines were fighting one another. So there was some competition, but I know exactly what you're talking because I was thinking about that movie. It's like, but there's something not there. There's no what's the word? You're not overcoming anything,
Sure.
right? It's just
Yeah.
a machine that's falling apart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Like when
There's no
you see a
feeling
boxer
or
get
no
punched in
blood.
the face, yeah, there's
Yeah.
no adversity, there's no story.
Sure.
It's just
Right.
two machines beating each other up.
Yeah, and at that point, it's basically who has the best technology. It's
Yes,
not like
absolutely.
who trained the hardest, who whatever.
But,
It's like
on that, but specifically about that movie, which was kind of funny because it was they found like this, like the robot he was invested, blah blah. blah.
he was
He
taking
wound up
steroids.
he wound up destroying it. Yeah, he got
He got steroids.
But he wound up destroying it, so he wound up. They looked for scraps, whatever, and they found this like old school like training dummy robot, which would just kind of like shadow box with you. And he wound up training it, well, not training it, but he programmed it to be able to, because he was an old school boxer himself. So
Okay.
he wound up training it to be able to mimic his own moves. So he was essentially fighting the boxing fights with the robot, along with it being in the ring. So it kind of maybe.
Oh, yeah.
So it kind
I
of
remember
became
that
like
now.
he was actually fighting those battles
he
against the
really
other
wasn't.
robots
Yeah.
because it was using his own
Right.
physical prowess.
What about health cures in the future? Well, because here comes the man against the machine kind of thing. It's like, people get like hip replacements, right?
Sure.
That's not a real, that's artificial, whatever it is, whatever the material
Yeah.
they decide to
Yeah.
use. You know what I'm saying? To the point where there are people who have mechanical arms or, just limbs in general. Are we now, would we consider certain things as cures? Or like, eventually, is there just going to be like just, the old school like Bionic Man and Bionic Woman
Yeah.
is like, or is that just what we're doing? Because you hear a lot of stories. Well, we've been hearing this stuff where you get to the point where you can basically manipulate DNA, play God, pick what your kid's going to actually look like.
Sure.
You know
Right,
what I'm
yeah.
saying? And it's like,
There's parts of that, and there's even like stuff where like they're experimenting with like taking your own DNA and I guess regrowing back that whatever broken part, and so like
Right.
putting that so it's not
Well, yeah, that-
so it lessens the whole the part of it where your body might reject somebody else's body part. So it was like it's yours, so of course your body's not gonna reject it. So it's like stuff like that where there are like bits and pieces of getting to that point where you can
so will there ever be a point where natural selection is getting fought against?
Is no longer natural.
Right.
I hope not.
Well, yeah. Well, like, okay, for example, like, if I smoke for 75 years, if I smoke cigarettes for 75 years and know at, when I'm 80 years old, I can just get, like, these fake lungs.
Lung
So it
replacement.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So natural selection would mean I killed myself slowly. I could have lived till 90, but instead I cut myself 15 years because I smoked my whole life. You know what I'm saying? Where will it ever be? Will that interfere with natural selection?
And that's what kind of like the stories like the cyberpunk, which is like mostly everybody is mechanical or synthetic in some form or another, but being natural is the anomaly as opposed to having mechanical body parts is the norm.
Right.
So it's like that stuff like that. It seems like we're getting closer to that regard. Maybe not. Like I doubt people will actually fully jump full force into that type of thing where you're fully changing most of your body parts.
What would be the point of that? Living to live? Like, so what? You get new lungs for what? Like, it would have to be a specific person. Like, everybody just can't get lungs for lungs. If you're a boring-ass person, you're not doing anything. You're just taking up air and eating. Like, what's the hell's the point?
Exactly.
Well, that's just with everything. I mean, back in the day, even going back 100 years ago, not everyone could afford healthcare. You know what I'm saying? Like, you couldn't just go, like, there's one doctor in town doing house calls and stuff. Not everyone could, quote, afford that. So, like, now it's, like, affordable healthcare. Everyone could, at some level, can get some provider to give them healthcare services. You know what I'm saying? So then the future, maybe not everyone could afford those chrome lungs that operate for you.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? But these people are saying they can grow blood vessels and stuff. It might not be mechanical. It might just be, something out of another human being for, how we donate organs. I mean, skin is considered an organ.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe they'll start taking skin donations, start building I don't know, but it's definitely interesting to think about. Will people ever get sick? We're talking about cures for cancer and stuff, and, every person you talk to has a different response. Some people will say scientific fact proves that this is all crap and it's a made-up thing. Scientific facts prove that there's millions of cures out there. They're just blocking our access to them.
Yeah.
So let's just say there are cures for that, right? Now they're going to start to judge you on, well, what kind of life have you lived? Do you deserve this cure?
Right.
Like, it might get to that point to where what you're talking about, they're going to judge you on the type of person you are. Life and death for you could be how you lived your life.
So if you don't have enough,
Creepy.
it's gonna sound like a total like game term, but enough experience points or whatever it is you call it, then you don't have the level enough to accept this cure. or whatever it
Right.
is.
Yeah, it's like when
I feel like it's like that now.
yeah.
I feel like there's certain people that need like organ transplants, and I know some people have been on a list for a long time. They had like a crappy lifestyle, and next thing you know, I hear like so and so's like grandmom lived a healthy life. She needed it, and she got it right away.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's I feel like it's like
there-
a
yeah, there is some
lifestyle,
levels.
and like they don't announce it, but in the back, like behind the stage, like they say there's something going on. They're like, all right, this person deserves this. You know what I
Right.
mean, it's not technically like out there. They don't say it.
I
Or
don't know. It's weird.
it's like who makes that call? But again, that's a judgment call. I don't know who's making that call. I'm
No,
saying
yeah,
that's
yeah.
a question just to throw out
No,
to
I'm
the
saying
world.
that's how I feel.
But I'm saying
feel like that's what-
put it this way, okay? Put it this way: when we're making these calls and we're going back on this grading system, it's like who do you give a chance to and who don't you give a chance to? You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Have we all not seen someone literally turn their life around?
Yeah.
Right? Who could have been living a crappy lifestyle,
Sure, yeah.
right? And then completely are like a great example for whatever. Or do you give that person, or is it the same as giving a cold-blooded killer versus a 2-year-old baby that's dying and they both need something of similar, they both need a kidney to survive.
Yeah.
Who are you going to give it to? One, because they potentially could have more hope or could do more. You know what I'm saying? But could also end up being a cold-blooded killer. We just don't know yet. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, who's making these calls?
Machines.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's
pretty
it just
Robots.
gets like, okay.
Plus we get into like Minority Report.
Right.
It's like-
So you just let a cold-blooded killer, die, right? And you got rid of one, but now you just accumulated one that's going to last another 15 years. I'm not saying that. I'm giving a very drastic example.
Right.
but it's a possibility.
Yeah,
I'm not,
absolutely
you know
it
what
is.
I mean? But again, beyond that, who's making that call? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? I'm not saying anybody here or in this world right now. I'm saying like 50 years from now,
Sure.
is that
There'll be so much statistical analysis
yeah,
being
that's what
done
I'm
and
saying.
algorithms. And be
Everything's
like, yeah, I'll
getting
make it.
recorded right now.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, right? So I'm very into like watching like the making of the mob and stuff like that. It's just fascinating to me, right? And a lot of this stuff has changed. A lot of the stuff they got away with in the 40. Well, you just go back. I mean, it's old as anything. But let's just say the history in America that's like recorded. It starts from the early 1900s, right? To the crimes and stuff that they were doing back then. Fast forward all the way up to even just the 50s. Fast forward all the way up to the 70s. In the 70s, that technology started taking over. That's when they start recording people. There's video cameras. You can't just rob a corner store coming in the 80s. You can't just put a gun to someone's head in the middle of the street in the 90s.
Yeah.
You can't just, you know what I mean? You can't credit card scam people anymore at this point.
Yeah.
You can, but you're going to get caught.
Right.
Or at some
Right.
level, of course, there's, degrees to
Listen,
this stuff.
You can't even fart nowadays without
Yeah.
half
Everything's
the world
being
knowing.
recorded.
Yeah.
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 So their criminal practice has changed just because of technology. Literally, the way they operate, their organization changed because of technology.
Sure.
But it also gained because now they're doing different kinds of scams and stuff with the technology.
Absolutely.
Oh, there's
Everything
always an
goes with
answer.
Technology.
So you just go with it.
They-
Listen, we are always going to evolve, good or bad. We're going to figure
Yeah.
out a way to get around everything.
But I think the killing lessened.
the out and out killing, like the straight
The
up
outright
Yeah.
violence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. They
Al,
tried. I
Al
think
Capone style, where you just going down
machine
with a Tommy
guns,
gun,
you just shooting
yeah,
people
absolutely.
down. Like
Point blank on someone.
right. Our judicial system has totally changed,
Sure.
and how people get convicted and what they get convicted for.
Yeah.
There's experience now. You know what I'm saying? And they're using these old cases against these newer cases where it's like, dang, this wasn't an issue before.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I've seen like DNA changed a lot of like the old school like cold cases and stuff like too. It was like
Right,
they had
yeah, how to
they,
catch somebody.
They were unsolved before, but now you can pull out DNA and stuff and solve those 20-year-old cases that
Right.
on
Yeah. So the future is like, do you fear the future or do you embrace it?
It's kind of
Position.
both. I mean, you have to embrace it,
Yeah.
but you also can fear it because you don't know what the heck they're gonna do next.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a natural thing.
But kind of going to the example you gave before of like the investment was all done on paper and forth. Like you have to change with those type of stuff to go with the new technology because otherwise, you can be left behind.
Right.
But people don't want to change.
Not that they don't want to change; they just want to be comfortable. Everybody just wants
Yeah.
to be comfortable.
People don't like change though,
Well,
but
no,
they have to go with
And
it.
a lot of technology is making everything easier too. It's
yeah,
just
but
simplifying things.
But we did talk about I don't know if it was last week or a week before. It's not necessarily like a specific person. It's literally how we're built. You're built to protect
Right.
yourself, and anytime you're in an uncomfortable situation, you put your guard up. It's going back to Cro-Magnon man or whatever. You're out there surviving, and a dinosaur wants to rip your head off or whatever. You know what I mean? You gotta figure out. You're like your head's on a swivel.
Yeah.
That's still in our DNA. That didn't go away. Just like the tailbone. What's the tailbone for? We've evolved, but in that evolution, we still have, the old school way of how a human being literally operates.
yeah, there's fear of change.
Yeah. But that's a natural thing for your body. That's the reason why, with all these studies, we should learn how to overcome those things because now we know, for the most part, certain things are okay.
Right.
When before, you're living out in the wild and you're like, nothing's okay. It's dark.
Yeah.
You didn't have the light that we have now. We didn't have the technology or a GPS to tell me where I'm at. I'm just walking around.
Sure.
That always fascinates me about like explorers or wars. I'm like, how in the world did you guys all know to meet at that perfect spot? And then cannons are going off. I'm like, but how did you know? People get lost going to another, state with technology.
Yeah.
Let alone, you mean to tell me you sent a messenger on a freaking horse for days? He finally got to you. He's like, they're over there around the mountains or whatever the heck. I don't even know what they said.
Third tree to the left is like, oh, that's not a problem.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
think
that's
about
wild.
how
River through
massive
the
just
woods.
our state is. And we live in a relatively smaller state, right? And how massive just the lands are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do two armies meet? Like, I don't know. I just don't get it. It's just crazy. Not that I don't. I understand that there's a way, but I'm just saying, it's mind-boggling to think. About.
And the thing is, they traveled days. Like
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
weeks
To get there.
It was literally expeditions.
And not even
Like,
to get
we know
far.
we're gonna go here.
Yo, but think about
I just drove 20 hours from New Orleans, dude, and that was the worst. That ride is horrible. I couldn't imagine these guys doing it in horse and buggies.
Yeah.
And, like,
weeks
they-
weeks at a time.
But think about like a V shape, like 5 points or one of these streets. That the streets aren't that far apart, right? And but when they keep going, they're really going off
Oh, yeah,
from each
different
other.
ways,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
sure.
And they're streets. This is actually paved roads for us.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if like you have this entire army, you're dragging all these freaking wagons and all kinds of stuff, and you just go off track, just that 5 foot, and you're just going in that direction. You're just staring at the North Star. Like, I don't get it. I don't know. I guess that's why I'm
like-
not alive then. But
Exactly. That's we grew up at that time, so we have no idea what it was to actually use that type of technology to figure out where the hell we supposed to go.
I'm sure there's probably like
They
the most
definitely have
basic way
landmarks.
of explaining this. Yeah.
Someone
We've spoken more about the past than we have the future.
That is true.
Well, since
what-
we know more about the past than we know the future. All right. So last question: if you could take a trip into the future, how far would you go, and what would you look for?
My grandkids' future, because I can kind of see where my kids going, but I'd like to see when my grandkids would be 60, 70, when I'm no longer around. I would love to know.
How do you know you won't be around?
Because
Technology.
I listen, a natural selection, I will select to go natural.
He's gonna select-
There's so many people in the world that like, why would I
so you
take
make
up?
a room for someone else?
Well, no, I
Hell,
think
that-
if everyone
huh.
gets cured, the point I was trying to make was that eventually, if that keeps going, then we'll be overpopulated. Literally.
We're almost overpopulated right now. No, I mean I don't think we can physically support. I don't know if the ecosystem can support the exponential growth. So that's what
Worldwide,
they
you
say.
mean? Yeah,
worldwide,
yeah,
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 worldwide.
sure.
In the United States, I think we'll be fine, but worldwide,
sure.
I mean I'm sure we're evolving.
The U.S. needs to build another cul-de-sac. All right, that's a good answer. Anyone else? How far would you go into the future, and what would you look for?
Cars. I didn't say cars. But I would like no cars.
Honestly, like, I don't know how far I would go, but I would love to look for, like, if I went 100 years ahead, I would look for the similarities of what once was. Like, we know cell phones and cars, right?
Yeah.
Like, the technology. And we see how they're operating as their form of transportation and their level of communication. What is it? That's
Yeah.
what I would look for.
Yeah.
So how are you getting
The
around?
yeah.
And then how are you communicating with one another? I think that's what it was like, oh, well, back in the day, it wasn't inside our bodies. It was like an outside device.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I would look for that kind of stuff. Like, what are you doing? Like, how do you get your food? Like,
well, and that's
what
that's another thing. What would the food of the future
would
look
it
like?
be? Yeah.
What would,
Would it be real food? Do you
Exactly.
does things really grow, or it's just made? You know what I mean? Like, you get an orange.
Well, you-
Does it grow? Do you grow an orange, or do they instantly make an
In
orange
the
for
morning, you set up your dinner. You put water on it. By the time you get home, it's done.
you? Dinner's done. Like,
Or what is it? Like you 3D print your
Oh,
food
yeah,
or
yeah,
something?
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
oh, the
yeah,
3D
yeah.
printer.
That's still
Actually, I
blows my
saw a
mind.
really creepy like
That blows
cartoon.
my mind.
I don't want no parts of
It
that.
broke. Like, it was this cartoon where the 3D printer broke and it kept making endless like cheeseburgers, and it was like trying to prove a point to the kid, like gluttony, but it was in the weirdest way. And this kid's like, "Look, I can print us food," and he's like, "Oh, let me see," and it was like too much of a good thing.
right.
Yeah, it could just turn into a disaster. It was just,
Yeah.
it had the basic lesson
Concept
in
of it,
there.
yeah.
And then something like, how far does what's religion look like there? You know what I'm saying? Because for me, I read the Bible and it blows my mind. These stories, how old they are and how relevant
Still
they are.
is.
Yeah, like I'm like, wow.
Like,
Yeah, that's another thing with me. I'm still like fascinated with like history, with like
Right.
past tense. I'm not even looking towards what's going on in the future. Obviously, with current events and lifestyle, you have to, but like thinking about stories and stuff, thinking about what's the possibility. I don't think I'm even there yet.
yeah, it's wild. I mean, even like with weather, they say weather's controlled now. How controlled is it compared to the future? Like, can they just literally like one day make it snow and it's like, all right, now it's winter, and what?
Or
It'll
we
literally
need
be-
it to rain because it's a drought.
Because it's a drought, right? Turn a switch on because let's make it rain now. Like,
Optional
is that-
seasons.
Is that gonna be a thing? Like, or can they make certain areas hot all over again, or places to work cold make them hot, or vice versa? Like, could they turn things around?
Would we be on other planets?
Would we be in another planet?
That's what I was thinking. I don't know how far to go, but I was thinking what
Pluto.
space exploration would look like.
Yeah.
In the future, like how far out they've gone, if they even still,
Do that.
Yeah, I think the moon.
Do we even exist?
The moon will be more of a common vacation destination.
It'll be like a airport or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
It'll be a destination spot to get to some other planet or something.
That's wild. Scary, but wild.
But how funny would that be if it's like you go 50 to 100 years from now and it's not as impressive as you thought? Like if you went from here to there, if you gradually went there, then you're not like that story, like Back to the Future. We're not impressed with 2015 because we lived through it, right? Yeah. But if we just jump there, right, 50 years, and you're just not impressed,
that's
how fucking funny would that
be? Exactly like it is now.
A good question would be, see our grandfather. Ask him how impressed was he from, what was he born in the 40s till now? You know what I mean? Like what is his what is his go through it?
Yeah, but
because I mean things evolved from then to now, so he's
probably not that impressed.
I don't think he's impressed, dude. Like, well, you gotta think it's like
right. So
like,
he's
I don't think he understands like stuff that's going on now, with, like the internet and stuff. Like,
I don't think he's aware. Just like we're not aware of so many. Think about that. This is how like ridiculous we are to think that we know all of what's going on.
Right.
Right. That we have a podcast and we're explaining ourselves. Think about to that level of Welo, how we see Welo operating, and there's people, and then we're looking at how the technologies that he uses, the way he operates on a day-to-day basis, right? The dude still got like bunny ears on his, TV and has a flip phone, right? So think about that. There's people like beyond us that are looking at us that way. Yeah. I heard one time, and I might have said this a bunch of times, but it was like the most like sobering like example I've ever heard. Someone said, how do you think Albert Einstein operated amongst other people? And someone said, it's like, they said, I could imagine it would be like being cold stone sober and everyone around you was just drunk. Like you're operating the way we're talking right now, very normal, right? Because no one's intoxicated. And then you're just imagine going to like, a bar and like that's
2 a.m.
I'm saying like, that's like the level of intelligence that's around you.
Yeah.
Like that's what it would be like to be Albert Einstein.
Oh, jeez.
Like that's how far, a bond. It was just an example of like that's probably what it's like. I don't know. And the guy was like, "That's coming from a drunk like me." It was a very funny thing to say. But I always think about them like, wow, it's humbling in the same sense. Yeah. I mean, just think about what you thought you knew 5 years ago about life. But any of us, what we thought we knew about life, like, we got this figured out. Or even if you didn't think you had it figured out, just what you thought you knew.
Sure.
Yeah, or even like with you guys at work, well, heck, like the tech IT, how much it changed in the past 2 years.
Nice.
All right. We'll end this episode with quotes, and the first one is by Jim Rohn. All right. Happiness is not something you postpone for the future. It is something you design for the present. And the second one by Eleanor Roosevelt said, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." All right, so there you have it, folks, the future. In this episode, the crew talks about their thoughts on what the future holds in their lives and the world at large. We covered topics that range from sports, health, cures, technology, education, and much more. We wrapped the episode up with quotes by Jim Rohn and Eleanor Roosevelt. Awesome. Guys, thanks again for joining us. The Rotated Views podcast was produced for self-development purposes. Huge shout out to our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Blessed Lifestyle brand. That is BL3SSED.com. Also sponsored by The Motivation Files Unleashed. This motivational mixtape will be your fuel for success. Available on all platforms. Guys, don't forget to visit the website, JimmyLeeVelez.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rotated Views. If you have any inquiries or questions, email us at info@JimmyLeeVelez.com. On behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we wish you massive success. Stay blessed.